Welcome along. Today, as part of our New Year, New You month, we're talking to Claire Doherty. Claire, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, thanks Emily for inviting me to talk today. And for those of you that don't know me, I am a medical intuitive. So I help to support women who are suffering with either health issues or confidence issues to reconnect with their bodies and find a place of energy overflow and away from pain.
Awesome. So today, as part of this New Year, New You, we're going to talk about the confidence aspect of your work.
Yeah.
Okay, fire away.
So I just think that during this transitional period of our lives, we can become overly self-critical. So there's a lot of negative self-talk that goes on. We start to maybe not be very happy with the way that we look or the way that our clothes feel on us, and we have all these physical changes. I mean, there's huge lists, anything from, your hair thinning or drying or changing colour to, your skin changing, elasticity changing, to, sex lives changing, to, the list is endless. Your mood, hot flashes, all of that. And we can become really, really harsh with ourselves and say things to ourselves that we just wouldn't say to anyone else. We wouldn't say it to our friends. We wouldn't say it to, our daughters. But we sort of think it's okay to say these things to ourselves. And this is because within each of us, we have this little part called the inner critic, which is that part of you that is, very judgmental towards yourself and criticizes yourself quite a lot. And part of the reason that we do that is I think we are still sort of trapped in this kind of dogma that as women, we have to meet a certain standard, we have to look a certain way, that we have to act a certain way, and be a certain way. And obviously during this period of our lives, we're changing, and it's not uncommon to put on a lot of weight. It's not uncommon for your body shape to change. It's not uncommon for your sex life to suddenly change. And we can struggle with that, and that's okay, and that's natural. And instead of really kind of criticizing ourselves, I think that if we could step back a little bit and try and understand ourselves and our bodies a little bit more, and be a bit kinder to ourselves, it would actually take some of the stress off ourselves. Because what we invariably try and do is to try and be the person that we were 10 years ago, or, in some cases, try and be somebody completely different that we've never been, because social media or, culture portrays that, we can still be in our 50s and 60s and, or late 40s and still be stick thin, if we've ever been stick thin, and still, ride horses whilst painting a picture and doing our washing all at the same time. And
the children are perfectly fed at the same time as well.
Exactly.
And we're earning megabucks.
Yeah, all of that. And it's just, none of it is true life. But, we are fed this image. We are fed all this stuff from other people. And most of the time it's not women that feed us it, although women can play a huge role in portraying it in films and in, any kind of media, because, that's simply what happens. But we buy into it and we believe it, and so then we start this little kind of critical conversation in our heads that's telling us, well, if only I was thinner I'd be happier, or, if I wasn't fat then, I'd be happy. If I, wasn't this, then I'd be happy. If my hair wasn't oily and thin, I'd be happy. And actually it's not always true, and it's not always helpful. But the other thing that's not helpful either is to then get frustrated with ourselves for even having that conversation. So it kind of sets off this spiral whereby we then become very frustrated with ourselves for the very fact that we have criticised ourselves. And it's important to actually acknowledge that we all do it. We've all got this inner critic, and it is a part of ourselves. So rather than hating it or getting frustrated with it, maybe it's a little bit more helpful to acknowledge that that goes on, acknowledge that part of ourselves, and to try and understand why we do it. And the reason why we do it is not only are we trying to measure up to something that we aren't at the moment, so we're comparing ourselves either with somebody who we used to be or somebody else that we're not, but we're also doing it as a form of protection, which sounds really, really strange. But for some people, you may have been brought up in an environment where you were kind of told that certain things made you a good girl and certain things made you a naughty girl or a bad girl, and young ladies don't do this and nice young ladies do that, and women do this and other women don't do that. And we store all this and we take it all on, and it starts to sort of form our beliefs and the basis of our behaviours. And so when we're doing something or our appearance changes and we no longer match up to that image that we were told we should be, then the inner critic starts to unleash itself in our ear, because we're not perfect. We haven't met that image of what we were told by our teachers or our friends or our parents or our family or whoever that we should be. And because we're not doing it all perfectly, then we must be failing. And so to preempt this sense of failure, to really kind of prepare ourselves for this, I'm not worthy enough and I'm doing it all wrong, we actually attack ourselves first before somebody else can get there. Because if we do it first, we've prepared ourselves and, we've already accepted we're not good enough. So that if somebody else were to say it to us, which, come on, let's face it, nobody, worth their salt is going to come up to you and say, you look really bad, you've put weight on, God, your hair looks awful. But if we do it to ourselves first, we've already put a little security blanket around ourselves, because it won't hurt as much when somebody else says it to us. And that is what the inner critic does. So getting then frustrated with ourselves for doing that in the first place isn't helpful. Try and understand why you're doing it. Try and understand why you're attacking yourself. But also realise that if you didn't have that part of yourself, so if you didn't have that inner critic at all, you would never be able to kind of reflect inward on yourself and kind of, look at your behaviour or look at yourself physically or mentally and make a judgment about whether something is working for you or not working for you or helpful or not. So when we're kind of in a nice balanced situation and we feel really happy and nice, really good, our inner critic tends to be more of a self-examiner. We tend to look at things in a much more logical, balanced way. So we might look at something and kind of think, oh, well, that dress doesn't fit me anymore. It's getting a bit snug. But, that's okay, because, I wore it last year quite a lot and I can still fit into these other 4 dresses that are fine. So, yeah, that's fine. And we're much more balanced, because we might say, oh, well, I've put weight on, but, it's the winter and I'm not doing as much exercise and, my body's changing. When we reach this kind of out of balance inner critic, we switch on to this kind of completely illogical self-examination, which is highly critical, and we start to talk to ourselves in a really negative way. And so what that does is it actually just slowly strips your confidence and destroys your confidence in a way that is not helpful, because instead of nurturing ourselves, what we're doing is we are slowly chipping away, chip every day, about our behavior, about our appearance, and our self-worth, starts to really, really, really come down. And, self-confidence and self-belief is something that is a full-time job. It's something that we constantly need to nurture through our lives, because we're constantly taking in messages, being bombarded with things that are telling us that actually we're not good enough, and that, we need to change something about ourselves in order to meet the bar and to be able to, get to where we want to be or where we should be. So my kind of message for this is basically that in 2020, I'd love for all of us to be a little bit more understanding of our behaviours. So when we are being self-critical, to maybe stop and pause and think, okay, I'm really hating myself at the moment. Where is this coming from? Oh, I've put on 2 stone, okay, and I don't feel comfortable with this, okay, but why is that? Is it because actually I'm struggling to be the person that I was because I believe that I'm not attractive anymore? And where does that come from? And is it even true? Have I changed as a person, or is it just my appearance that's changing? And during this transitional period of the perimenopause, is it normal for my body to change? And I think trying to explore our behaviour a little bit more, and why we're talking to ourselves in a way that's quite harsh, can help us to understand ourselves a little bit more and develop a little bit more compassion, and maybe find a little bit more balance in our lives.
Yeah, and I was just thinking the examples you gave of, you know, your inner critic telling you you're fat or you're ugly or you're, you know, all sorts of horrible things. If a friend of yours came to you saying that their partner was saying that to them, massive red flag, and you'd be helping them to get out of that situation. But we allow it when it's ourselves saying it.
Yeah, that exactly my point. You'd be saying, get out of that door, girlfriend. Do not stay with that person. That is not acceptable. Actually, funnily enough, this very morning, I had a client that came to see me, and we were chatting, and she said, oh, I'm a bit stressed at work. Blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, I've had 3 people come to me this morning. She said, one of them's told me I look like a school teacher, one of them told me I look like a pilot, and the other one told me that I don't look like I should work in an office. So she had on a white blouse with a black wool V-neck style sweater, black trousers, black pumps. And I said, oh, were all these men by any chance? And she said, yes, they were. And I said, so with you working in an office, what are you expected to wear? Have you got a dress code? And she said, no, there's no policy. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. I said, so what did you take from those comments? And she said, I've got no idea. She said, I don't know if they were telling me as a compliment, if they were telling me that I looked awful, if I'm supposed to be going in wearing a skirt and high heels, or if I'm, you know. And she said, I'm really actually quite confused by it. She said, but I was gobsmacked each time somebody said it to me. And she said, the last person I think that had said something to her, she said, oh, right, and is there anything else that you don't like about me, you know, while you're telling me? And apparently he walked away. But I think that's kind of an example of, you know, she was shocked that somebody had spoken to her like this. And she told her manager, who is a male, and her manager was actually shocked as well and said, that's unacceptable. And, you know, we do that to ourselves, though. We put something on, we look in the mirror and we go, oh, that's so disgusting. I look awful. I look like X, Y, or Z. Yet to hear that from somebody else is actually really offensive. Somehow when we're doing it to ourselves, we kind of forget that. It becomes acceptable, but it's really not any more acceptable. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's even less acceptable, because you've got to be your own cheerleader.
Yeah, and also if we just go back to the things you mentioned before, like about potentially your hair is feeling as thinned out, or is dry, or is greasier than it used to be, or you've put on some extra weight around your middle and your clothes are fitting differently. If you go and catch up with your friends on a girly night out, not one of them is ever going to say, well, your hair's looking a bit shit, isn't it? I mean, it's just never going to happen.
It's true. It's so true. Yeah, absolutely. We don't need it. We don't need it from anyone else, and we definitely don't need it to come from us. So, you know, I would urge you, if you're watching this, to really think about 2020 being a year where you try and explore some of the behaviours that might not be helping you, and that you know, try and don't become a different person, try and understand yourself more, so that, you know, when we say new year, new you, it's not that there's anything wrong with you at the moment at all. Everyone is perfect as they are, and you know, everyone is enough. You don't need to change in any way. You just need to give yourself a little bit more understanding.
Yeah, and we actually just want every single person watching this to believe that we already think they're awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even think, we know they are. And we just need them to believe it as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claire.
You're welcome.